I call the water board meeting to order. I'll do a roll call.
Mike Romack.
Jerry Burmeister.
Donnie Meyer. We have a quorum. Election of officers. For president,
Donnie Meyer.
Yeah, I'll second that.
okay? I will accept
Vice President Jerry Burmeister.
Gary Burmeister.
Like so.
Secretary,
I'm the only one left.
you're the only one left. I love it. Okay, we have our officers. Approval of the meeting of the previous minutes.
You just need, Donnie, you just need to say, somebody just needs to go so moved or whatever.
Okay, I make a motion to close the officers election.
So moved.
Second.
Second.
Okay, we are closed. Moving
You
to,
just gotta take a vote. Just take a vote. Anybody opposed?
anybody opposed to this? Hearing none. Now we
You're good.
approve it. How's that?
That's as quick as you can do it.
You can make a motion for card paper since you're the president.
Approval of the previous minutes.
I make a motion that we approve the previous meeting's minutes.
I second that.
Have a motion and a second. In favor, aye.
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 Approved. Old business. Lead line inventory funding program. Update.
Good evening. Since our last meeting, so at our last meeting, I think it was the latter part of 2023, we had introduced the lead line inventory program. And at that time, we had not submitted that to the 121 public portal there that the state has designated to house this information. But since then, we have uploaded our inventory, which consists of 2,112 water service lines. And we have also conducted that survey that we had put out, I think maybe the very end of 2023, going into early 2024. We collected a little bit over 300 responses from that survey, which was a little bit better than what we had originally anticipated. And so from there, and then also with that those responses from the survey, there was an area where they could indicate that they needed assistance to be able to better assist in identifying those water service lines. So our water department, they went out hands off, but they did some just site visits to take a look at the piping that comes in off of that meter into the premise of the home to identify what type of material that those lines consisted of. So from there, we probably updated, I would say 300-400 lines on that inventory. So we've continued to plug away on that. We're going to keep that survey out there over the next several months, and we'll collect that data over the course of the summertime. We have until October 16th of 2024 to submit our, say, final. We could always, it's a working document that we'll continue to always update and date those unknown material lines to then a known material. But we will have until that date to submit it to the public portal. We've got directives from EPA that's coming here in the next month, and so we're going to learn more about that and what all that looks like. But between now and then, we'll continue to keep that updated. Is there any questions on the lead line, the first phase of the lead line program?
So so can we pull those flags now since you on Madison Avenue that's there, or do you want us to leave them there all summer and mow around them, or what do you?
Are you flags
I
on
don't think
Madison
that's
Avenue?
South
That's probably
No,
not
it says
related.
water company.
I know, but they have to work the lunch with gas company.
Oh, okay, they mark it for,
I got the same issue at work.
okay, so do we leave? So, all right,
Yeah, CenterPoint is they're updating their gas lines and in the public right of way. So you'll see that throughout the town. So,
okay.
yeah. Yeah, we're actually not having to call in locates. Again, this is just more of a hands-off look at what these water lines are. So, yeah. Won't be any excavation at this time.
Okay.
Very good.
Thank you.
Stay up here.
Yeah, new business.
Yeah, for new business, so again, a part of this is 3 different projects within this one program. And so we have, not say completely finished up project 1. Again, we'll continue to update that inventory. But as you see for new business, we do have a few items for you this evening. We have our consultants here from Commonwealth that has assisted us not only with project 1, but then also project 2. We'll discuss that a little bit more in detail tonight and go over that with you. We've got Tree Ann Quick. She is a project manager. She's an engineer with Commonwealth. And then we also have a partner and project engineer, senior project engineer, Darren Wells, here with us tonight. So they are going to assist us in our discussions, our presentations. And so a part of project 2, which that is where we're at this point in the program, is 2 deliverables that need to be created. And so those 2 deliverables are needed for our state revolving fund application. So if a community is seeking either a grant or a low interest loan, we can go through the Indiana Finance Authority to seek those funds. And as part of this phase, we have produced and worked with Commonwealth to produce the asset management plan and then the PER, which is our preliminary engineering report. So tonight, I'm going to give you just a broad overview of our asset management plan. Then they're going to come in and they're going to give a great presentation they put together on the PER. And again, those are the 2 components that we need to have to be ready for that state revolving fund applications. We have initially applied for that April 1 of this year, but we have different components that will continue to finalize between now and July 1 when the state releases the priority and the scoring on those applications. So, but that being said, these directives coming in from EPA, every community across the state of Indiana is working hard to address these. Unfortunately, with IFA, they have provided some funding assistance with each of these phases. So with phase 1, if you recall, we had about $15,000 that we received in grant money to assist us with the inventory. Then with this phase 2, we have the AMP and the PER, and we are able to get $10,000 assistance to be able to cover some of those costs for those deliverables. And then phase 3, which is project type 3, that is the excavation and the construction of, say, if we need to replace any lead lines there that are identified as lead, or that could be on the public side, and that would be from, say, the water main, the meter, up to the private side, which is actually to the premise of the home, or if there is a meter inside the home, it can even go to replacement at no cost to the resident up to that meter. So, so that is what we're exploring now and in the process of. So tonight, Stephanie, if you want to go to, I apologize, number 4. That is our asset management plan that Commonwealth Engineers has put together for us. It's a very detailed plan. We will just kind of hit some highlights so you have an understanding of what this plan consists of. There's about 150 pages, but again, we'll just kind of give you an overview of that. That being said, we have the second part, which is that preliminary engineering report. It is actually going to be a public hearing. So we will conduct that like a public hearing, give an opportunity for any questions, comments from the public. And from that, then there's a resolution that's going to be presented to you to your board for consideration. And that consideration is to determine if you feel that we can approve and that we do want to approve, then this PER that's been presented and prepared for us. And just kind of a follow-up to that, we'll have a second resolution that will be presented to town council tomorrow evening. Town council members will then, what they will be looking at is giving authorization to the town manager, Scott Bresky, to be able to sign any documents as necessary that go along with that state revolving fund application. So, so after I give you a little bit of synopsis of the asset management plan, presentation will come from Commonwealth on the PER, and then I'll give you a little bit of recap as far as kind of what you could expect timeline and process of that state revolving fund application, how that kind of shakes out here this next year. So for the asset management plan, we've been working with Commonwealth, I'd say, for the last several months on this document. We've provided them monthly water quality reports. We've provided them mapping. We've provided also existing facility assets. We've provided processes that would be either with training, hiring, customer service, customer complaint processes, purchasing authorities, and so forth. So we've provided all that, and they've put and compiled all this into one report. And this report, it's designed to ensure that we have a long-term sustainable water utility program here. To be able to assure that we have proper operation, maintenance, and care of our water utilities to be able to continue to provide that safe and healthy water service to our customers. In this report, there are 3 parts. So the first part is a report that outlines our water utility facility assets. So it breaks down from pumps to water treatment plants, to meters, to filtration, aeration systems, to our disinfection system, our backwash tanks, our storage facilities, and even our hydrants. So it really breaks it in great detail. If you want to scroll through it a little bit, just kind of show you a little bit in detail, I think this is kind of part A, but it's a very detailed report, how they take a look at all of our infrastructure for our water utilities. And then from there, it gives us a great description as far as the condition, the age, the risk of failure, and then expected replacement costs for each of those infrastructure pieces. And then it provides a needs assessment for replacement, recommended improvements, and then also a maintenance schedule based on those needs.
Do you have like a page number?
I don't, I apologize, I should have looked, but there's some grids in there. They took, that's kind of where it breaks down into the facilities, and I would say probably the first 50 pages, maybe, I don't know.
There's a master sheet that shows all the assets kind of listed like an Excel spreadsheet.
Okay, so
Yeah. Buried in there
It's
somewhere.
somewhere in there.
Maybe an appendix.
I know that,
where it starts, but that's not helpful.
yeah, it's
A few more
very,
pages.
Oh, yeah.
You can double
I
check.
think we're getting close.
You'll-
Yeah, there it is. Starts breaking down the facilities and their manufacturer and their capacities and so forth. And then from there, they broke it down as far as life expectancy, how, what was needing priority wise to be replaced and so forth. And then in that identification of those future improvement projects, they came to, and I apologize, I wish I would have written down the page on this as well. But it provides kind of a breakdown for the next 20 years of what is anticipated for replacement needs and what those recommendations are. So that included select main replacements. Those were identified by our water department supervisor in his experience in the field. Also constructing of a new 1.2 gallon storage tank. We currently have the 2 water storage towers, but looking at the need for a 3rd one at some point as our community grows. And then lead line replacement anticipated in on those costs as well. And then also doubling the capacity for our water treatment plant number 2. So we have the one that is located here by the Pendleton Elementary off of East Street. That's what we call kind of the old water treatment plant. Looking at needs for decommissioning that, or at least improving that facility at some point in the future, as well as improving and adding on to the new treatment plant that's out there off of 900 South. Is that right? Yeah. And then, of course, we'll have those conversations at some point in time of where do we anticipate the best place for a third water treatment plant? Maybe perhaps out west as the growth is kind of going in that direction. But that is for a later date though, but they have definitely identified that need to double plant number 2 capacity, and then construct then potentially then a third water treatment plant. So on this 20-year lookout and looking at monthly reports of operation, testing results, capacity, and needs, they were looking at about $65 million for all those cost replacements. Then that kind of brings us to part 2. And so part 2, it goes over the managerial section. So this is our kind of our operations, our processes that we have internally for our water department utility. So this would be current operator certifications and license. It breaks it down from the staff from our supervisor to his existing staff members and what licenses they have. Also goes into description of our water utility system. That includes our our parcel identification numbers for the water utility infrastructure, and then operating plans, which include job descriptions, duties, manuals, organizational charts. And then from there, it goes into written procedures. And so written procedures, it breaks down a little bit later on there, Stephanie, about trainings, our processes, what type of training topics that we typically have those staff engage in, billing procedures, purchasing and authority processes, customer and payment processes, ordinances, and then also meter replacements and record keeping. So that is that kind of wraps up the purpose of part 2. And then part 3 was provided by Reedy Financial. They are financial advisors for the town of Pendleton. And that third section, what they did is they took the first section and they basically did a verification as far as what not only what we'd be looking at as far as costs, but then a capital plan. And then based on those expenses and anticipated expenses, and then taking a look at what our current rate is on our base usage rate to then what could be needed and necessary to be increased over time to accommodate that those needs for replacement and maintenance and improvements. So looking at I think it was somewhere around $39 per month, up to about mid-range at $62 and to the high end with other options at $73 a month. So like, again, that was more of just a long-term analysis and, you know, look at what our water utility needs are anticipated in 20 years.
What is that percentage of increase?
So 40, so you're looking at, well, about 40, about 30–40%
It's the average, that's,
increase.
the 40 is the average, you think?
Yes, per month. Yeah, that was the base,
50%.
so,
Over 20 years.
the rate change base would be at 39 to
I forget what our
73.
current average rate.
That'd be 70.
So you're,
Yeah.
It must be in there somewhere. I mean, I could go get
yeah.
our rate study from last year, but.
If you scroll down a little bit longer, at the very end of it, it's mainly just our mapping or appendix, any supporting documents.
They
But
don't have the
it-
current rate in there.
Yeah, it does. It has the 39.
Our current, that's.
Basically double it.
Right there. That's the page there. For
the
monthly
current
charge
rate
at
is
4,000.
39 at 4,000.
Yeah, that's gonna be 73, which is almost doubled.
I just got this, I haven't
Yeah.
gotten into it too much to see what, it's probably mostly. Bond payments that jacked out of it.
Yes, and
We just-
you're correct. It does include all the,
Right. But that, so that, the current rate study was just done, it's not even 12 months old. The new rates. Remember we did that?
Yeah.
So, I mean, that doesn't mean we're sure in the market. It's-
yeah, this is the whole kit caboodle. This is, everything of what is anticipated to be needed in a 20-year span. And Scott is correct, and we just received this from Reedy, but it did break down as far as if there is any low interest loans that we get through the state revolving fund, as well as there would be any bonds that the town would take out to be able to make these.
So,
So those costs could be absorbed within those sources of funding as well.
so your option, proposed rate is either $62 or $73. I don't understand
Yeah.
what that means. up there.
No,
There-
so they put together all our possible costs and
Okay.
updates, include the doubling of the plant,
Yes.
probably
the
doubling of the
decommissioning the plant one.
Okay,
I don't
Putting
think that's,
it-
I don't think that's correct, actually.
That's not in there.
I think these numbers are specific to the PER recommended project, not
The
everything
20-year?
project.
Yeah,
Okay.
this is just the.
Yeah,
Okay,
but
just the
PER
PE,
has the
okay.
doubling of the
Okay.
plant, right?
As a future project, not as the recommended project.
Okay.
But option one, I believe, is
Where's
100% loan. Option two is I think a
where's
5
the
million.
recommended? Where's the recommended projects page?
I can't speak to that, this particular report, this is my first time seeing it.
Earlier in the report, it outlines what option one is and what option two is.
Okay,
In
And
the
those
PE
numbers-
are,
so we
Yeah,
can go back.
Those numbers match the PER numbers. They don't outline what's included in there,
okay.
but the loan amount is the PER loan amount.
Well, if we go, we're gonna go over PR next.
So we're gonna talk about.
So,
Yeah.
why don't we just sort of wait? I think we can get your answer.
Yeah.
Okay,
I got another question. Don't we have water coming in from the west?
No,
it used to be a long time before the new water treatment plant.
that is correct.
okay, so I had water. But I didn't get it did I get it from Pendleton out there when I was at that
Yes.
store?
It was a combination between the two water plants. When they sold that water plant, they became a different disinfectant. They were using chloramines, which does not interchange with chlorine. So
Okay.
we end up shutting that off and using only
Okay,
that one.
all right.
Mostly that line that was run out to that treatment plant was emergency purposes, because we didn't have a second water treatment plant, so we had no redundancy.
And we were getting close to our capacity, so we could not expand for future growth,
Right.
because the state had stopped any big projects. So that was a temporary Band-Aid until the new water plant was built. The only reason I know that is because I was here.
Because he had to do it.
So we are not recommending a rate, change or, to address this. This is just our asset management plan for long-term planning.
Okay.
For a water utility. Do you have any questions about this piece of the project before I turn it over to Commonwealth? Okay, so I will turn it over and Darren, okay? And this will be a public meeting, so we'll need to close the regular meeting and then open up the public meeting, and then he'll do his presentation. At that time, then you would then close the public meeting, but prior to that, just ask if there is any comments or questions, concerns from the public. And then after that is done, then you can make a decision on the resolution, and Stephanie will put that up in front of you when they're all done.
Make a motion to close the water board meeting.
A second.
Second, all in favor? Aye. Okay, we close it, we'll open up a public meeting, all in favor? Aye.
You're up.
Yep, very good. Yep, we're gonna put this PowerPoint presentation up on the screen here. Can you do that in full screen view?
Oh, we do this for the board. Did we do, is that view or slide? Try view. Slideshow. Yeah.
It's a little bigger. Well, again, my name's Darren Wells with Commonwealth Engineers, and I'm Tran Quick with me. We will be tag teaming on this presentation. So there's some technical issues. So we're gonna go over the preliminary engineering report, a PER. That's the document that the Indiana Finance Authority State Revolving Fund Program requires when you're essentially pursuing funding through that agency. Excellent. A couple administrative items here, because this is a public hearing, and although I don't see here, it does require a public comment period to be open. We're passing around a sign-in sheet as well, so please sign in. Board member, everybody in this room actually needs to sign in. That becomes a part of the meeting documentation that we do submit to the IFA, the Indiana Finance Authority. Meeting minutes are also required to be taken as part of this meeting. I assume you guys do that anyway as part of the board action, just nothing in detail, just basically that we held a public hearing. And then public comments, again, as part of this requirement, there's a 5-day hold period for public comments to come in, whether they show up tonight at the meeting or somehow they get wind of it and they want to send a message to us via email. They have 5 days, so basically till May 13th to submit comments. Then the project is kind of closed off at that point, and then you can ultimately submit to the state the remaining part of the project. Again, as Denise already said, we submitted this PR back on April 1st, but we left out the public participation phase, which is tonight's purpose, until it is completed. Then we'll submit that documentation to them. So my first section here will be the purpose of the PR and what we're doing here. If you've not gone through a PR process before, maybe you have, it's been a while. Again, IFA administers this through the State Revolving Fund Program. The purpose of this is we're evaluating your current and future conditions of your water system. Again, this is specific to water only. And we're also looking at your needs, what the problems are with your system and recommendations going forward. We're looking at environmental impacts to a project where a multitude of different environmental aspects are reviewed and put into this PER document. We go through alternatives for the improvements to try to accommodate the project needs, or the reason why we're doing the project. Then we go through ultimately a final recommendation portion where, as the name implies, we're kind of proposing a path going forward on what to do with your system to keep it going for the next 20 years or so. Ultimately, the whole purpose of this is to ensure that the water quality that you guys have is maintained at the highest level throughout the planning period, which is 20 years. The PR on the right side of the screen here, the PR is broken down into 8 different sections. And I'm gonna go through those kind of briefly on the upcoming slides here. So the first one is the project planning, section 1. That's where we talk about the planning area, basically the corporation limits of the town. Both the current area as well as the 20-year planning areas within the same limits. We go through the environmental resources that are present. Again, we look at many items environmentally: floodplain, geology, wetlands, historic, archaeological significant areas, things like that, to see if there's any potential impacts that could be affected by a proposed project. We also look at population trends and your anticipated growth over that 20-year period. So the chart that you have in front of you right here, apologize, the wording is kind of blurry here, but this is basically a population projection that's been taking place over the past century. And then the blue line where it switches to the red line is sort of at your current level right now. So you're around 5,000 or so people, about 5,600 plus or minus. And then you'll see a very strong upward incline of growth over the next 20 years that we've projected. So on the chart to the right, basically you'll see today's population is roughly 5,600 people. And we're projecting in the next 20 years, maybe going up another 10,000 or so people to roughly 15,500. This is all projection, and by no means is it locked in. We got this information through both this historical population trends and certainly talking with Scott and other members of the team, Denise and such, to come up with a projection. It's roughly 500 people per year is being added to your system is what we've kind of come up with at this point. This could be shy. I mean, Scott's made comments in prior meetings that you could, full build out could be 40,000 people within the town at some point down the road here. But that's all just conjecture right now. We can't lock it in. So we kind of have to stop at some spot of what we thought. But as you can see here, it is still a steady growth nonetheless. There's a sharp spike there. The next section is looking at your existing facilities. Again, we kind of look at the history of your system. And again, the ANP that Denise mentioned also talks about that as well. We describe your existing facilities. When I say facilities, we're talking from the supply source, from the wells to the treatment, to the storage, to the distribution system and your service lines. We look at it all. We look at the condition of your existing facilities through just physical review that we've been to the site and looked at them, as well as just using data, desktop data as well. Then we look at your current production, your demand that you're currently treating at your water treatment plants with the customer's demand right now. And then we look at the financial status of your existing facilities. So this map right here is basically a description of your existing facilities in a nutshell. So I mentioned earlier the corporation limit. So this blue line here that kind of surrounds the community here is your corporation limits that in your planning area that we've looked at. It's hard to tell here, but for those that may not be as familiar with your system or what you actually have right now, your water supply consists of 7 wells. You have 4 that are active at water that serve treatment plant number 1, the old treatment plant. And then you have 3 that are active at the new treatment plant on the far south side of the south end of your system here. So that's plant number 2 down here. Plant number 1 is across from elementary school, more centered into your area here. Your treatment plant, again, you have 2 treatment plants. Number 1 is built circa 1970, so it's now 50 plus years old. It was 55 years old. Has a capacity of 800,000 gallons per day. And then plant number 2, your newer plant was put in just a few years ago in 2017. It has a capacity of 1.3 MGD. So your total capacity, and that's bad math right there, but your total capacity is more like 2.1 MGD. Your current average flow of what you're doing right now from your system is roughly about 700,000 plus or minus. So you certainly have a lot more capacity available right now than what you currently need. Your storage system, you have 2 elevated storage tanks. You have the interstate tank on the west side of your system by the interstate, obviously, and that's a 500,000 gallon tank that was put in roughly 1990. And then you have your water plant tank, more centered again by the old water plant. It's 300,000 gallons and put in back in 1987. So you have a total storage capacity of about 800,000 gallons in your system right now. Your distribution system is made up of 1-inch to 16-inch lines. The vast majority of them are 4-inch to 16-inch lines, but you do have small service lines out there as well. Total length is roughly 248,000 feet or roughly 47 miles. You have various pipe materials that are being used throughout your system, PVC, cast iron, ductile iron, and then many that are actually unknown. There's no documentation of what those materials are. That's actually the vast majority. We do not have true documentation yet of those. As far as the purpose of the project, again, we're looking at the health, the sanitation, and security aspects of your system to make sure it's meeting code compliant in the 20-year period. Aging and deficient infrastructure. Again, what are the needs? Like I mentioned, you have your plants. Your own plant is 50 years old. You have other aging infrastructure, water system, water distribution lines and such. And then we also look at the growth projections. What can we see over the next 20 years? Kind of jive with that population projection I mentioned to you in an earlier slide. So we look at several sources when we looked at the reasonable growth, which is going to come up in another slide. Stats Indiana's census data and projections. We can use historical data that's available online. We met with the town. Again, like I mentioned, Scott and Denise and Ryan and other town representatives gave us information on what they anticipate maybe the growth could be. We also looked at 2 prior studies that were done, both in 2021, one being an impact fee plan, and then your other one is your I-69 interchange master plan, where they also are projecting what growth might occur and where it might occur. So this chart right here, or this graphic right here on the left side is basically a color-coded graphic. The key being that the main differences are you'll see the gray or the blackish areas. Those are what we believe to be the 10-year projection of growth in the area. And then in the orange are the overall 20-year growth. Obviously, there's a lot of remaining area to be built out within your planning limits right now. But again, at some point, we have to kind of make a stop of what we know as of today, what might occur. Again, this could change certainly overnight if the new developments come in. But for the 10-year projections, we were using that 2021 impact fee plan documentation. And then for the 20-year projections, we were also combining that then with the that I-69 corridor interchange. So I-69 right here. The growth is obviously more likely heading towards the west, as you can see here, versus what you currently have on the east side of the interstate. And then the graphic on the right side of the screen is just flow demands of all these areas. So all these are numbered individually, and we did an analysis of what we thought that acreage would convert to in a gallon per day basis. So overall, we were looking at 27 different areas that could be affected, single family to commercial establishments, which total of 801,000 gallons of added demand of what you're currently doing today over this projected period. So quite a bit of growth, more than doubling what you currently have. Next slide. So this chart, again, it's hard to see, so I'll try to go over it. Basically, on the left side is the demand projections in water. So you have gallons per day over the year. So again, we're looking at a 20-year period. And on the right side of the screen, it's similarly, you have demand, gallon per day, and then years as well on the storage side of things. So the purple line at the bottom is basically the average demand that we see of your system. Obviously, right here is around where you're at today. So that's 700,000 plus or minus gallon per day. And then this is the projection going forward of what we think the average demand might do over the next 20 years based on that population growth that we talked about on a prior slide in that development growth. This blue line represents the peak flow from the average. Basically, we're using a 2-to-1 peaking factor from average to peak based on historical records. So you can see your peak flow increasing from today all the way up to over 3 million gallons per day in 20 years. And then this blue line, this upper blue line is basically saying if your plant was operated instead of 24 hours a day of operation, you gave it a little bit of cushion and only operated for 20 hours per day. Because most water plants do not operate 24 hours to have storage built into your system. You would need a little bit higher demand on a peak standpoint. So we took a stab, again, the graphics are a little choppy here, I think from the conversion of PowerPoint to PDF maybe, but this first line here is basically saying maybe by the year 2028 or so, you may need to go to a plant expansion and double your current plant capacity to meet these peak demands, because this blue line is now starting to exceed where your current capacity is in your plant. Your total 2 plants are 2.1 MGD. So now we're starting to go above it. So maybe it's time to consider a plant expansion at some point. So in this case, we assume that plant number 2, your newer plant, which has the room and the design for it to double in size from 1.3 to 2.6 MGD. And then at that point, you could also consider either demolishing your old plant number 1, or it would have to probably go through some sort of refurbishment potentially, given its current age. And then as you keep on going, the population grows and your flow demand grows, then we'd be looking maybe around 2036 plus or minus of another expansion where you need more plant capacity to satisfy your growth and your needs. And in this case, plant number 2 has kind of been maxed out on its design. We were making the assumption that a third plant will be put on the west side of your territory as that grow on the west of I-69. Now, I say a third plant. Now, in reality, plant number 1, that old plant might be decommissioned by that time, so you'd only have 2 plants when all said and done. But that remains to be seen with how that will grow. And we don't have an actual location where that plant would be. These are, again, these are planning level, kind of high level review. And on the right side of the sheet is the storage capacity needs. I mentioned earlier that your 2 storage tanks right now are 800,000 gallons. That's this line right here. Normally, your storage capacity is kind of dictated by, the rule of thumb is you at least want to have enough storage that equals the average demand of your system, 24 hours worth of flow, which is this purple line. This is your average demand from a storage standpoint. And then the peak would be typically, we would normally, as kind of a best engineering practice or sort of a factor safety cushion, we would say go 1.5 times that purple line, which presents this blue line. So 1.5 times your average flow, so right here. And then we also look at fire flow demand because your system is a fire flow demand community. But in this case, fire flow demands are already being met. Your orange line of requiring fire flow demand is actually lower than your average demand. So you are not handcuffed by fire flow requirements at this point. But as the demand grows, you will see again that your current capacity of 800,000 gallons is lower than your average demand. So again, at some point in the near future, we made the recommendation of building a new storage tank. What that ultimate volume needs to be is yet to be determined, but for this report exercise, we said, let's go to 1.2 million of additional capacity, which gives you a totality of 2 million gallons of total capacity, this green line right here. As you can see, by building this extra capacity, you now have many years of useful service before you potentially exceed what the storage tank is. But I wouldn't be concerned about this blue line being above the green line. In reality, again, this is sort of a factor of safety, if you will. If you're above the purple line, which is the more important line, then you'd be good to go. So at some point in the near future, we think you're currently storage deficient, and we think we need to build more into the system. Certainly towards the west of the system, you can put a new tank in there. Okay, thank you. Section 4, the alternatives considered. So we looked at, again, many aspects of your system: distribution system, service line, storage, chemical feed, and the backwash at water plant 2. We got a lot of this information from Ryan, ultimately to get feedback on how the system performs. So for the distribution system, every alternative we look at is required by SRF to have the no action option. In other words, you don't do anything, just keep the status quo and see how it takes you. Obviously, most of those get rolled out pretty quickly because project needs dictate. As infrastructure starts failing, you need to do something with it. So for the distribution system, we looked at replacing all your lines less than 4 inches in diameter versus replacing all your lines less than 6 inches in diameter. The purpose of that is to try to, again, give you as much fire flow demand capabilities as you can. The state of Indiana requires anything, you need to be at least 6 inches in diameter or greater to have fire flow. And again, you have a lot of parts of your system that still are less than 6 inches in diameter. While they maybe can get some fire flow, that's not the ideal situation. So we looked at a couple of alternatives to replace mains, wholesale approach. And then we also did a targeted water main replacement of just areas that Ryan gave us anecdotally or just known that were old in your system, have broken down, had leaks, repairs, things like that Trian will go over in more detail where those areas are at. On the service lines, again, we looked at your lead service line work and we broke up all the alternatives and just grouped them in together in bulk: 25%, 50%, 75%, 100% replacements. And the cost obviously goes up dramatically as you do that. Storage, we looked at again, just perform storage tank repairs versus constructing a new tank down in the future and perform storage tank repairs. At your plant, chemical feed, one of the items we understand that IDEM has mentioned in prior inspections of your plant, at least at plant number 1, is that your chlorine and your fluoride facilities are in the same room. And that's not an ideal situation for those chemicals. Normally you want to separate the chemicals out into different rooms. And there's also just the safety of having chlorine gas at plant number 1 in terms of if there's an accidental release of gas, you're so close to residential or the elementary school and just development around the area that you may need mitigation action. And then the backwash at water plant number 2, again, this is something that Ryan specifically told us was a problem at water plant number 2. And what we mean by that is just simply improving how the backwash system is being handled than what it's doing today. Because it's apparently it's created a little bit of a burden of operations, how it's currently being put into service. And then we looked at environmental aspects, sustainability, green kind of projects, regionalizing, and things like that. Section 5 is the selection of alternatives. So we took into account construction costs, non-construction costs, annual operational costs, all in the PR. I'm not going to bore you with all the numbers on this presentation, but it's all buried in the PER. Basically, we're saying we look at everything from a life cycle cost analysis. There's a defined interest rate and a defined 20-year period that we look at. And we try to say, what will you be spending over that time in today's dollars? Try to bring it all back to today to kind of keep it on the equal playing field with all the different alternatives. The lowest life cycle cost is not necessarily the best option to pick. That needs to be sorted through at the town through the recommendation phase. Good. Then section 6, the recommended alternative, again, taking everything that we've already looked at in the PR, the technical side of things, the cost side of things, operations, environment, things like that. We kind of build all that in to determine what we want to do for the recommended alternative. And again, Trianne will talk about what we're recommending at the end here. But section 7 is sort of just a filler section that SRF requires. It's kind of redundant. It's just conclusions or recommendations of what we've already said. And then section 8, the last section, that's where Reedy kind of got involved and did an analysis for the rate study that we'll talk about again at the end of this PUR. And then there's other just specific things that SRF requires. Are there any interlocal agreements that you have with other areas? Have you attended an IURC, or sorry, have you attended a regional planning meeting annually, which you're required to do? Are you a part of the IURC? Just have we done an asset management plan? Yes, we have. Things like that. And then obviously the public participation phase, what we're doing tonight is part of that section. I'm going to turn it over to Trianne to go more into the weeds of the project.
Okay, so I'm gonna go into a little bit more detail about what the needs are that we identified through this PER. And then I'll go into how we recommend addressing them. So for this first need, this is based off of the lead service line inventory that Denise discussed earlier. This nice figure here is something that we put together based on the materials identified in the lead service line inventory. It's a little bit outdated. It doesn't include all of the survey responses that you've received, but in general, it shows an idea of where kind of the hotspots are in the system. So obviously the red is the higher priority. So that's the areas where either the material isn't known on both sides of the both the utility side and the customer side of the service line, or it is known and it is lead. And then from there, it just becomes lower priority. Green being, we know that there's no lead here on either the home or the utility side. So that's a need that we identified as and as part of the phase 2 of the lead service line inventory monies that you got from SRF. We looked into this as part of one of the needs for the project. The second need is more with the distribution system. This is a very common need within systems. Over time, isolation valves stop working, they get paved over, or maybe when a line was put in originally, they just didn't put valves in. So there are infrequent valves in the system, and a lot of them that exist are unreliable. So that makes isolating small portions of the system when there are breaks or leaks or anything like that difficult. And then from the 2019 water loss audit, the utility experienced about a 40% water loss, which is obviously a little bit high. That's revenue that you're missing out on. So we looked at these are the areas identified by Ryan as being the areas that need the most work. Either they have more frequent leaks or they're really old. So we looked into replacing these lines. As Darren kind of outlined already, IDEM has requested that the fluoride and chlorine be separated into 2 different rooms. So that's something that we looked into here. And also that a scrubber system for chlorine gas mitigation be installed because of the close proximity to the elementary school. And then Dixon Engineering did some storage tank inspections in 2022, and they identified a couple of items that just needed done. It's more, repairs and rehab. It's very typical maintenance items that are needed for tanks of this age. And then finally, we have the backwash at the treatment plant 2. The way that it's backwashing right now is not functionally working very well. So we have looked into how we can maybe tie that in to the sewer system rather than right now it runs back through the plant and it ends up just hitting the filters with iron. And so the water quality is going down with the backwash water is going back through the plant. So then they have to backwash more frequently. It's just not a very efficient system. So from that, we put together a recommended project based on these specific needs. I know that we outlined some more needs that are maybe a longer scope in the next 20 years, next 5, next 10 years. These are just the needs that we've identified as needing done soon in this year in this project cycle. So the recommended project that we looked at is we included replacing 50% of the lead service lines. So that's just the service lines that are the highest priority on that map that I had up there. And the 50% is kind of a placeholder. Really, the amount would be whatever SRF funding would give you the amount for. So we're asking for replacing 50% of these lines. They may say, here's $2 million. You can replace however much you can replace with $2 million. Targeted water main replacement. Again, those are the areas that were identified by Ryan. Kind of hard to see on this figure, but they're denoted in red here. Adding isolation valves to the system. So that would just be adding more valves so that there's more flexibility in what can be isolated in the system. Performing the storage tank repairs. Again, that's just the necessary rehab based on the Dixon inspections. Separating chlorine and fluoride at treatment plant 1, and also adding the scrubbers. And then rerouting the backwash to the sewer so that we don't have that inefficient flow through the system. And then the future projects that we kind of discussed was adding additional storage, most likely west of 69. If there's going to be a lot of growth over here, we want to have something over there to feed those people. Adding additional water supply, that would likely be done down by treatment plant 2. And then treatment plant 2 capacity expansion. So like Darren said, that's already set up to be doubled in capacity. So we would just go ahead and do that. And then also add a loop so that there's a redundant feed from that treatment plant into the town. Right now it's only feeding in one spot, and that can create a bottleneck. If something were to happen there, you could cut off a large supply of water from your system. And adding that loop would allow for treatment plant 1 to be abandoned. But if that's something that the town would like to keep in place, we could also just do some upgrades to that treatment plant to make sure that it'll last for a while. The third treatment plant west of 69, again, that's far in the future, somewhere in the next 15 years or so. And then ongoing water main replacements. This is something that every utility is dealing with as their water mains age. There's more leaks and breaks, and they just have to replace them. So that'll be ongoing for a while, I'm sure. So here is the project costs that we have outlined. The FABA contingency that we have in here is 10% of the total project cost. Basically, that is Build America, Buy America. Might be Buy America, Build America. One of those two. Basically, it's just most of the materials in the project will have to be produced in the United States. So that adds a bit of cost. Some of those materials aren't produced in the United States right now, so it can be really expensive to get them. So that comes out to total project costs of just over $13 million, including non-construction, which would be design, legal fees, bond bank, all the random miscellaneous things, permits. And then the project schedule here, I don't want to keep with this too long, but the PPL should be announced July 1st, 2024, and that'll tell us how the town ranks. against other projects and kind of what type of funding package you might be able to get. And then after that is announced, we can start design on the project. You have to move now. And then permits, we anticipate that there might be 4-ish permits for this project. They're pretty typical. The IDEM construction permit, construction stormwater general permit. Any work that we're doing near an NDOT road will need a right-of-way permit, and then a county right-of-way permit for county roads. And then this is the rate impact that we were looking at earlier. So this is just the rate impact for that $13 million project for this PER. It got a little confusing because we mixed in the asset management plan stuff and the PER stuff, but this is just for the PER project. So this option 1 is 100% loan for that project. So that's saying SRF comes back and says, we're not going to give you any grant. This is what the amount would be. And then option 2 is assuming there's a $5 million grant from SRF, and that's up to 6238.
That 5 million grant is just sort of a
It's just a
semi-grant,
random.
yeah.
So yeah, are there any questions from
That's
anybody?
what they're saying, I've already 2 years spent out.
Don't think so. You guys got any questions? Any public input? Hearing none. Thank you. So we close the close the public meeting. Yeah.
I knew we closed the public meeting.
Second. All in favor, aye.
Aye.
Closed.
Now we
Back
have
to
to
the
re-
water board meeting.
Back
to the water board meeting.
to the water board, we've got one more thing.
Huh.
What,
Oh,
what do we got left?
just the state revolving fund, so.
Oh,
Give
okay,
it-
there were
just-
2 resolutions.
Yeah, so we have the one resolution that your body would consider. Stephanie's pulling that up now. We get, oh, no. That is our application. See, it should be down there, number 8. So this is the Waterworks resolution that you have heard the presentation, the details of the PER, and that you're then hereby approving this PER to then be submitted along with that state revolving fund. So for that, just a little bit of explanation, a little bit more detail as far as that process. We did file the initial application on April 1. Then we had the final documents between now and July to be able to wrap up and get those to IFA. That being the final AMP, we did have the AMP completed at the time of the filing of the application. However, the financial piece of that was coming in, and so we provided then a requirement of a certified form indicating that that has been completed. But then we needed to hold this public hearing on this PER. So certification of that will then be submitted to IFA along with the signed resolution. And then the way that it works, and this is kind of the positive, the beauty of this
We gotta
program.
cut this way
Okay.
short, 'cause we're 5 minutes into the next.
The way that it works is that the IFA will score us. So it's a very competitive program. They will take our application, they'll score us according to all the deliverables that have been submitted. We, July 1, will be able to know where we sit at priority and whether or not we will be granted a grant or a low interest loan. It would be 1 to about 3% interest loan for any infrastructure projects that we so choose to move forward with. We do not, just because we applied, and even if we get a low interest bearing loan approved, it doesn't mean that we have to commit. If the town of Pendleton decides that we are not ready, we do not have to move forward, say until then the next fiscal year, but at least we'll know where we stand and what things that we need to tighten up and strengthen if we need to do that. So, so anyway, that being said, we'll turn it back over to you, and if you want.
Go ahead and put up the other there too.
The second one is just for the town council, and that gives authority to you, for you to sign
Okay, so
any
they only
follow-up.
need to
So they
approve
only
one.
need to approve, I consider approving then the PER resolution.
So we approve this and it goes on to the council tomorrow night.
Yeah, it's, you're not really making a decision, you're just saying you accept it. You've seen it, you've accepted it. I don't know what a case would be when you wouldn't accept it.
So we're just making a motion to, accept the resolution that in front of us. So that's what I say.
Okay.
Move that we do that.
Motion second. For the resolution. 24-WW-1. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Unanimous. Okay. Last thing on the agenda is 3 and 4-inch water service fees.
So we're, tap and cap fees, can you bring? Whichever one. Okay, this is a capacity fee, so we're taking that to, from 1,000 for a residence, or to 2,000 to 2,000 for residents, and then 1,000 to 2,000 for an EDU, which is equivalent, unit, the same as a residence for commercial properties. So, that is based on just the number of years we've had at 3% interest, that brings it up to 2,000. That capacity fee.
So is this in similar as regional waste? I don't know. So that's how they,
Oh, I see what you're saying.
The
So
EDU was-
we'll use, Fall Creek Regional Waste EDU. We'll ask them what they think an EDU is for a project. And we'll use that.
okay,
That way it's a third party sort of coming to an agreement. Or presenting what they think their opinion is.
okay.
There is, I think the default is 250 gallons per day. That's in a separate ordinance.
And that's a 5/8 or a 1-inch service, is that what you're saying?
No,
Basically,
this is just a capacity fee. So if it's a very large construction project, then the massive fee could be a lot more.
Right.
Capacity fee is, basically the investment. Prior system development fee is the investment that's needed going forward with that project, that development. Sometimes it's confusing.
Right, I think businesses, they vary, 4 to 6.
Yeah.
Okay.
So, just on this, you're just, passing, you're just would vote whether you want to pass this on to, the town council. They'll see this tomorrow. And it's just if you recommend it or don't recommend it, it's up to you. Or no, I think you can also do no action or no
Neutral.
neutral. You have 3 choices. Okay. But that's just based on inflation, so it should be controversial.
Well, I'll make a motion to, we go from 1,000 to 2,000 on residential.
I'll second it. I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay. Passed.
This is all just new construction.
Fast forward to the,
Yeah, the next one is the tap fee. This is based on our actual cost too. Ryan worked up with the cost to install a meter and to connect up. So the residential, which are 5/8, 2 3/4, right, Donnie?
yes,
And then a 1-inch, he can fix those costs. Anything above that, we're just gonna go with our basic town labor rate and material plus 15%. Ryan would probably even tell you this is not keeping up with inflation.
I know it's not.
Yeah. So same thing.
Okay.
I move that we, accept the resolution to be passed to the council.
I'll second it. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, nobody. Good there. Anything else, Scott?
No, that's it. And thank you.
I move we
I know
adjourn.
I know you got flooded with a lot of information and some of it we're on our end of staff, we're digesting it still.
Okay. Adjourn the meeting. Thank you for your presentation.
Yes, thank you. Good job.
Mike?
Aaron, you're up
Oh.
next.